Hey everybody, Patrick Connor here, and welcome to Knuckles and Gloves Boxing Radio. I am here with former world champion Molly McConnell, but also with, of course, undefeated fighter from the Pacific Northwest, former three-time Oregon Golden Gloves champion Lorenzo Caldera. How are you guys doing?
Great.
We're doing good.
You know, you're fresh off of fighting just this past weekend in Tijuana. How did that go, Lorenzo? How are you feeling on the heels of that? I know you didn't take too much punishment, so I'm sure you physically feel all right, but nonetheless, there's a lot of preparation. There's a lot of nerves. How's everything going in the wake of that?
I would say everything went according to plan. So right now I'm still on cloud nine from it. It's like exactly a week today, actually. I'm back in the gym pretty much. Today is the first day of camp to get back out there and hopefully do it next month again. So short-lived celebration, but I'm feeling good about it. It's much easier if you just stay in shape, don't got to get ready.
Right. Yeah. That's time you don't have to spend in the gym preparing or losing weight or anything like that, right?
Yeah, for sure. And then got the ring rust out, so don't want to gather anymore again. Just keep the ball rolling now that it's going.
Well, you fought at the Big Punch Arena in Tijuana, which I've actually never been to, but I was fortunate enough to, for a stretch, live in Tijuana. But while I was there, the boxing scene it wasn't non-existent, but it's really picked up as far as stuff being televised and stuff being streamed. But the good thing about that, obviously, is that it provides some opportunities that otherwise might not be there. But apart from the opportunity, how was fighting in Tijuana? Like, how was the experience? How was how going through the motions down there? Was it much different?
It was a lot of, I guess, the typical hurry up and wait type of thing, like be ready for them to call your name and things like that. It was a little bit hectic because we did like a blood test and COVID test like right before the weigh-in, right the day before. So it's kind of a new experience, but at the same time, I've been in the busy environment of like the amateur scene, big tournaments where you're weighing in with 100 other guys and it takes forever. And yeah, it's kind of used to it. It brought back some memories. So nothing quite new, but a little different.
Well, so I mean, I watched the card. I watched as much of it as I could. I mean, I think which was probably
They were fighting all day.
Yeah, they went all day. Yeah.
It was a long card, so
Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't stick with it the entire time, but it definitely seemed like it was. I don't want to disparage it at all, but it definitely seemed like there was a lot of kind of like scrambling and stuff like that from fight to fight. Like there was a long stretch of waiting and then a big scramble where it was like, oh, I guess that's the fight coming on next. And luckily you went on right around the time you were supposed to go on, so that wasn't too bad.
Yeah, we didn't really know, what the setup would be. Never having been there, we've only fought in the U.S., so
Right.
It was maybe a little more loosely organized than it might have been here, but other than that, it was pretty much the same. Everybody there treated us really nice. The promoter was great, and they actually had two shows that day. They had a morning. I don't know if you watched that. They had a morning show, which then went all the way up until the evening show. So I don't even know what the total count was on fights. But Lorenzo, we managed to get him kind of on the beginning of the evening part, so that was good.
And yeah, it looked like, as you said, Lorenzo, in the ring, it looked like everything went about as you would hope it to go. And I mean, I guess the only hope beyond how you looked was that you could possibly get a little bit more time in, having not been in the ring for a little bit. But nonetheless, you got the win. You're 4-0. How do you feel like do you feel kind of like positive after getting a little bit more momentum going and getting going again?
Yeah, definitely. I was feeling like I was gathering momentum before everything shut down, and it kind of, definitely put a hamper on things, just not having anything local for the longest. And I am thankful for this opportunity that they gave me, and getting the momentum back definitely feels great, and that's part of the reason why I don't want to let it go and just keep it rolling.
Well, at the very least, if you're trying to look for a positive, you can say you fought in another country. You've fought in two countries now. Bit of a road warrior,
Yeah, this has been, I mean, I think this has been rough on everybody, obviously the pandemic, but I feel so bad for these athletes, these guys that, their careers have essentially just been put on hold. for, almost 2 years. Most of them, he hadn't fought in 22 months, and he's in the same boat most other guys are. There's some fights going on in the US, but unless you have if you have a, golden boy promoter or somebody like that, you're getting on those cards. Other than that, there's just not a lot of opportunity right now. So we made a calculated decision to do this. You have to get the ball rolling again anyway at some point. So this seemed like a great opportunity to do that. And he was on a roll. He was 3-0. We had 3 fights in a year, which was great to start. And then, all of a sudden nothing. So we're hoping to get at least 2 more in this year if we can, which will all be in Mexico. And that's just where the events are happening. So that's, that's where we have to go. That's where we'll go.
That seems to be something, a part of this equation that a lot of people seem to kind of be forgetting, that of course, yeah, that the top 10 pound for pound fighters or whatever, they've been out and they've suffered and whatnot. But the real, I don't want to say the real tragedy, but the real loss in terms of time is with all due respect, Lorenzo, I don't mean to, look down on you, but being 4-0, you're still coming up. And a lot of fighters who have not kind of reached that level where every fight's televised type of thing, those are the fighters who have really lost the opportunities because the smaller and mid-sized promotions have just kind of had to be totally paused for now.
Yeah, if you think about those guys, Canelo and that, obviously, like you said, everyone suffered and there's nothing we could do about it. I mean, everyone's in the same boat. But those guys fight twice a year at this point in their career, maybe 3 times, that those big name guys probably twice a year. So, you're looking at a guy like Lorenzo, who's still coming up, he's going to fight 3, 4, 5 times a year if we can get it. So that's how you build your career to get up to that point. And it just kind of, everything stopped for everybody. So, it's a terrible situation, but I feel like we're kind of coming out of it now. We're starting to kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel, hopefully. Lorenzo has a local promoter, and I'm hoping that in 2022 he's going to start doing events again. It's not that he doesn't want to do events. It's, I think that state of Oregon and all the rules we have here and stuff, the boxing commission's been just uncooperative with that sort of thing. So we'll see, but I'm hoping like maybe first quarter of 2022 we'll be back in the US, but until then, we just got to get busy and stay busy. And that's kind of what we're trying to do.
Yeah. For anybody listening in who's from, for instance, California, New York, a bigger, more busy boxing state, they might not realize that in Oregon, there's only like a handful of commissioners and inspectors and whatnot that they can send out. So it's like, even if they were in a position where we could do fights and events and indoor stuff, it's like you have to plan really carefully. You can only fight so often because they can only do so much work.
Yeah.
Type of stuff. It's a really small office in the.
Yeah, that's it. Really small is an understatement. Yeah. And Oregon, I mean, as you know, I think has some of the strictest COVID rules in the country, and we have for most of this time. So, some of it, I feel a little bit like, I don't know. I feel a little bit angry about some of it because they've relaxed the rules for, things like the Trailblazers and the soccer and all that, but they still won't allow us to do boxing events here, which to me doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I mean, with COVID testing and all that, you're making it as safe as you can. It's never going to be 100% safe, but if the Trailblazers can play in an arena with however many thousands of fans, I don't see why, they shouldn't be able to do a boxing event that's going to obviously be much, much smaller than that. Anybody who's watched professional basketball or played it's a contact sport in itself. So, that argument doesn't really hold water for me. But it is what it is. So we just have to make the best of it. That's all you can do. Right.
Well, kind of going backward in time a little bit, Lorenzo, if you wouldn't mind kind of telling a little bit about your backstory. Because some people in the Pacific Northwest, I was lucky enough to call your pro debut against Gerald Gregory a couple of years ago. And, I spoke to you. I know a little bit about your backstory, but I guess the whole point of interviewing you guys is to, get your story out there. Hopefully not like a massive podcast or anything, but hopefully there are people who have never heard of either of you hear this story. So if you wouldn't mind.
Okay. So I've been fighting for about 17, maybe 18, training for 18 years now. I started when I was 8 years old. My dad was a coach at Knott Street at Addition Community Center. So I was kind of in the gym since diapers, kind of kept me around it. We went on trips. I remember going on trips with some of my earliest memories with the boxing team, just going to tournaments. Been training probably since like 7 or 8. Had my first fight when I was 9. And, stayed there, I want to say, till I was about 15 or so. Then they kind of changed management, had different coaches and everything. And my dad at the same time wanted to take a step back so that we didn't interfere with our like home life and training too much. You know, he was already telling me what to do at home. He was like, okay, I'm going to wait till you're pro to step back in. And he kind of gave the reins over to my uncle, Ray, and he trained me from the time I was about 14 or 15 to about, I want to say 20 or so. And, him and my father both passed away. My father ended up passing away in 2014 and Ray in 2018. So after that, I was going gym to gym prior to that, and decided to stick around with Molly. I had already known her, had a personal connection with her just from going gym to gym. Back in the day, we had trained at mutual gyms and everything. So once she had her program going, I was like, that's one of my best bets. I love the way how she runs things, and keeps a clean gym and everything.
We used to be sparring partners every now and then. When he was about, what, 14 maybe?
Yeah.
I don't know. He used to kick my ass. So we've known each other a long time.
Well, I was going to say, weight-wise, you were junior welterweight champion, and you're, right around lightweight or so, Lorenzo. So you're really not that far apart. I didn't know that though. But
yeah, we sparred quite a bit, off and on over the years. But he was kind of a floater. They used to go to a lot of different places, and so we would run into him at different places while I was still boxing.
Right.
And then we've had this gym now, my gym, for about, I think this is our 9th year. So how long have you been here? About 4 years? Maybe 5? I don't know. Time seems to.
Yeah, it all kind of matched together. I was wondering that as I was telling the story, making sure I got my.
Yeah, I think that we've worked together as, coach and boxer probably about maybe almost 5 years now. But I don't know, time's gone so fast, and I just lose track,
Well, and it sounds like the name of the game, or at least in part lately, has been getting work, kind of like almost like you've come full circle, Lorenzo. Like you said, you were traveling around and kind of going out of different gyms when you were younger. And if I've been following correctly on social media, it sounds like you guys been doing that lately too.
Yeah, definitely trying to get good looks and going from, we got kind of a stable of a couple pro fighters in the area that are going to be fighting on similar times and maybe even on the same card coming up here. So it'll be a good team to work with. We're all around the same size to get sparring and everything.
Yeah, I think when you're a pro, especially at Lorenzo's level, how good he is, it's great to just stay at your home gym all the time. But the reality is, these guys spar together so much that you need to go out and get different sparring partners, different work. So we do a lot of work with Fisticuffs Gym. They've got some really talented guys over there. That's been great. And then our Caro Boxing from Seattle comes down, and we've kind of gone back and forth a little bit with them. So, at this point in his career, you can't just, I tell them it sucks to be the best guy in the gym sometimes, because then you're not challenged. So we have to go and find people who are going to challenge him and kind of help him, get to that next level. You don't do it by just staying the same. So.
Well, when I had spoken to you before your pro debut, Lorenzo, I think that a lot of the things that were going on were a lot more fresh. Obviously, the loss of your father and the loss of your uncle, but at the time, you were definitely drawing a significant amount of inspiration going forward from that. And I would imagine that not much has changed, right?
Yeah, definitely, it's the same. It felt more so even fighting in unfamiliar territory. It felt like you need a little something extra with you, and it always feels like good to have, like, you're fighting for something bigger than yourself.
Well, and being a kind of like 3-time Oregon Golden Gloves winner, it seems as though there should be a little bit more of a big deal made out of that. Maybe I'm wrong, but in the Pacific Northwest, there have been a number of different fighters kind of on the come up, and you're among them. But your experience as a Oregon Golden Gloves winner, would you mind kind of like expounding on that a little bit? Like, do you remember much about winning 3 times?
Yeah, I definitely remember the tournament. They had it at the same, it's like a hotel complex. So it definitely was like a familiar feeling going in there a couple years in a row. And I remember 2013, I think that might have been the middle year that I won it. I got the Golden Boy Award, and they have like a little plaque that they put the names dating back for like at least 10 or 15 years. And I seen like a couple familiar names on there, people that I had been in the gym with and older people that I looked up to on there. So it felt good. And I remember getting my name on there finally. I was like, okay, this is set in stone for at least, let me count, 10, 15 years. But yeah, that's one of the bigger tournaments in Oregon, kind of a big deal. I guess everywhere, every state has their own, and that's felt good getting that.
Well, speaking of older people you look up to, sorry, Molly, I just had to figure out a way to, I had to.
That's a terrible segue right there.
I know, but I had to figure something, No, I was going to ask you about.
With all due respect, he says.
With all due respect. Well, I think after you say all due respect, you can say anything you want, right? And then it's
yeah, I guess so. That's the caveat, right?
Asking you about your pro career and your experience as a fighter yourself. You're from Washington, but I mean, I guess the name of the game up here is just kind of lumping the Pacific Northwest all together, especially with kind of boxing being somewhat on the decline in recent years in Portland and in other parts of Oregon. It's kind of picked up in Washington, but you had a lot of experience yourself in the early 2000s. What do you feel like the experience you had as both a woman in boxing, which itself is like its own battle, as you know better than I do, but I do know. Do you feel like that kind of experience and that kind of adversity really helps you guide Lorenzo in, for instance, new territory, fighting in a place like Tijuana, getting 4-0 and just kind of marching forward in his career? That's the kind of stuff that helps you make sure he doesn't have bad experiences or, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, of course, I think it helps. I had, between amateur and pro, I had 64 fights. So that's a lot of experience. I think if you kind of separate the coaching part from the business part, because I also manage him, I think that experience is probably more important. What I learned most from my own career was how to do the business part of boxing, because I had to do that all myself. There was no promoters that were signing women. There was none of that. So I managed myself. I had a couple managers early on. Nothing ever worked out. And then I remember having a couple people, and at some point I was like, I could do this myself. Like, this is not, these people aren't doing anything for me. So dealing, I think, just as a boxer, which is rare, as you know, usually boxers you don't need to stay away from that part, which is smart. But it's, back then it was almost like you had to do that. So I had to learn how to deal with promoters and commissions and all that stuff. So I think that experience with negotiating stuff and doing my own contracts and all that has come in handy. I mean, the Tijuana thing was a new experience for both of us, but it's just boxing, right? It's just wherever you are in the world, eventually Lorenzo's going to get in the ring, and it's just boxing. It doesn't matter if we're in Tijuana, if we're in Oregon, if we're in, Tokyo or wherever we are. The bottom line is it just comes down to boxing, and he knows how to do that. So we just have to navigate not only to that, but then through that situation. Once he gets in the ring, he knows what to do. So we're not reinventing the wheel. But yeah, I think that experience, obviously, especially in the business side of it, has really helped me kind of figure out how to navigate things a little bit better.
It's almost kind of like how they say, like in a courtroom, and anybody who has themselves for a client as whatever, fool for a client, right. Lawyer, yeah. That whole saying. Yep. It's almost kind of similar. Like most fighters who try to handle their own career don't do a very good job of it, but there are some who wind up doing okay, or perhaps even doing better than if they were given somebody a third off the top or something, Yeah.
Well, and I navigated myself to 2 world titles. So I think I did okay. Back then and nowadays I think women have been exposed in boxing a lot more, so that maybe wouldn't be the case that you would have to do that. But at some point you have to be proactive. If you want certain things in your career, you have to go make them happen. So that was kind of where I was at that time, and I just decided, okay, I'm just going to learn how to do this. So yeah, that experience it was really important to me, and I think maybe even more so than the boxing, that's kind of what I carried on, now that I'm coach and manager and dealing with pros and all that kind of thing.
So what led you to opening up your own gym? Did that kind of interest in the business and management part of your own career kind of pivot you into running your own gym?
Yeah, I mean, Lorenzo right now, he's the only pro we have here. So, it's not like I have a huge pro stable of people, and I don't want that necessarily. It's a lot of work to do, what we're doing. So if I had 5 guys, I don't even know if I could do that with, also the amateur team. We have a really robust fitness program here too. That's how we make money. So, I run that. It's hard to run your own business and then do all this other stuff. So I like having him be kind of the only pro. If we had another one, maybe. But I think what prompted me to open my own gym was, 16 years of going all around to some really great gyms and some not so great gyms. I mean, I've trained at gyms all over the country, and seen what people do well and what doesn't work. And I thought, I think I can do this better than it's being done in a lot of places. So that's kind of what prompted me to do it, is just to run a program that was more kind of cohesive and actually has like a curriculum that's a program instead of a lot of gyms. And I know you've seen a lot of places where people just kind of come and do their own thing and, hit the bag, and you've got people wander in and out and that kind of thing. We don't do that here. So everything's very structured. And that was, I think, a lot of people respond really well to that, and some don't, and that's just not what they want, and that's fine. Those aren't the people I want to work with anyway. So Lorenzo, I think, responded well to having more of a structure. But I do get guys occasionally who come in and they don't want to be told what to do. They don't want, coaching. They just want to, it's like, if you just want to go hit the bag somewhere, there's a 24-hour fitness down the street, and that probably sounds like more up your alley,
Well, it's a little bit more of a neighborhood gym too, where it's far more corporate gyms and stuff like that opening up, more and more LA Fitness type of gyms and chains and stuff. And I suppose in some ways there's nothing wrong with those things, and there are fighters who train out of those places. But I don't know. I guess if you're kind of going for the aesthetic and also a little bit more of an old school person, you want that neighborhood gym. You want the feel of the neighborhood gym, I suppose.
Yeah, are any of those guys that train out of 24-hour fitness successful?
Generally not, no.
Okay, well, there's your answer right there.
Yeah, I guess that is your answer. Well, Lorenzo, people watching or listening to this are probably gonna come away thinking, gosh, he's quiet. So what gets you not quiet? What fires you up?
I don't know. I'm generally a quiet person, I guess, but sometimes I'll start talking if I talk about something I'm passionate about. So I guess boxing is the one thing you could probably get me to talk about.
Do you watch much like contemporary, like boxing that happens nowadays?
Yeah, off and on. I have spurts where I'll really get in the zone. Kind of when I'm training for fights. Last night I watched the heavyweight Joshua and Usyk. That was pretty good fight.
Yeah. What did you think of that? I mean, how were you in agreement with the outcome and all that?
Yeah. I thought they did. I was they were giving out hometown decisions, so I was kind of worried that I thought that they might give him a draw or something. I thought Usyk deserved it. I thought that Joshua was actually going to be too strong and too big for him, but he proved me wrong for sure. He's a slick boxer, and I knew he could outbox him, but I didn't know he would have just the stamina and endurance to be able to do that for 12 rounds, because he started strong and finished strong. I was pleasantly surprised.
So when you moving up to take on Usyk?
I got a couple weight classes to maneuver through.
You got a little bit to go. You got to eat a whole nother person for that.
Yeah.
No, I agree. He looked really good. I expected Anthony Joshua to be just a little bit too big, and Usyk busted him up real good. It was a good fight too.
definitely.
Who are some of your favorite fighters right now?
Currently myself. I like to. I don't like to get too involved in the current fighters, just because I got to think about my own thing, and I don't want to. It's kind of, there's nothing wrong with loving people's styles, and watching people, but it's just kind of hard to pick a favorite in a game that you're in. But growing up, I watched a lot of the Fabulous Four. My dad was a big fan of Marvin Hagler, and Sugar Ray Leonard's probably my favorite. So watching them, and Tommy Hearns and Roberto Duran, all of them ended up duking it out, and those are probably my four favorite.
So what's the I guess the answer is almost always the same for every fighter when you say, what's the plan? And they say, well, I'm going to work my way to a world title, which is the eventual goal for just about every fighter. But obviously getting some momentum back during the pandemic and stuff like that. What do you think the timetable is for the next like 2 or 3 years? Where are we going to try to be?
We want to try to get, like Molly said, those 4 or 5 fights a year. Hopefully, I would say by then, maybe getting up to 10 rounders and starting to think about getting in the world title picture. For sure, it's going to take some baby steps, but definitely envision that in the future.
Yeah, I think our goal for him is just to keep him busy. Like I said, everybody's had almost 2 years off, unfortunately. So we've got some ground to make up, and we're planning on being back in Tijuana on October 23rd, and that'll probably be his last 4-rounder. And then possibly again before the end of the year, we'll see kind of how everything shakes out. But as long as he's not injured and he's training well and motivated to, keep up with stuff, there's no reason that he shouldn't be fighting as much as possible. I'm, confident in his abilities, and the more you do it, the better you get. The fight in Tijuana, I was actually, the way it turned out was perfect. I thought, he was able to get some ring rust off. It's great. You mentioned calling his pro debut, which was a 1st-round knockout, and those are great. That's a fun thing, and the crowd goes wild and all that. But the truth is, at this point in his career, those don't help you develop. So the fact that he got 2 rounds in and he got the knockout in the 3rd round was perfect. That's what we got, the same result we wanted, and he got to do a little bit of work. That's what we needed after 22 months off. If he'd gone out there and knocked that guy out in 30 seconds, we'd still be in the same boat we were in, before that. So one of the things about fighting in Mexico, those guys, I think people have a misconception about it, that you go down there and they're easy wins, and that's just not the case, especially now because they're so active and the U.S. isn't. So a lot of U.S. fighters, and we even saw, I think there were some Canadian guys there, and there are people coming from all different places. But those guys are tough, man. And sometimes what they maybe lack in skill a little bit, they make up for in toughness. They make up for in activity. A lot of them fight very frequently. So it's a good testing ground, and it's a good place to go and get some good hard experience, and they're not walkover fights for the most part.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, it was definitely the kind of fight where, as you said, a necessary fight, no question.
Yeah.
You can't fight kind of stiffs or step over opponents or anything like that. It's good to get active, but you're not going to learn anything. You're not going to be able to look back on tape or something like that and say, oh, well, that's what I need to work on, or at least not as easily.
Yeah. And I think after 2 years off, people would say, well, you could just get him an easy whatever. But, like I said, what we wanted was a little bit of ring time. And it was interesting. I could literally see the rust kind of coming off as the fight was going on. I don't know if you had that impression. Like once we got to the 3rd round, he was starting to find his groove and find his range and all that kind of thing. So that's what you want when you're in the corner and you can kind of just see that guy come into life. That's what we wanted to, go there. This guy he was a kickboxer also, and had, I think, what did he say, was 7-1 or something as a kickboxer. So, he's got experience, and he wasn't a novice, but and he touched Lorenzo a couple times. That's what you want. You got to get back in there and kind of get that experience and So I was super happy with the way the fight went. I knew that it was gonna take a minute for him to kind of, find his spot in there, and he did, and the result was what we wanted anyway. So I think the amount of time he got in there was actually beneficial.
From my perspective, like what I saw was pretty much what you saw. There were a handful of times where he got touched, but they were with shots that were like wily, weird, funky angles, stuff like that, where the guy was like dipping down and then throwing a weird overhand type of stuff. And it wasn't this like basic things that he was getting caught with. It was just a funky style that he was having to deal with. And then he eventually caught up to a round or so in. So I don't see that there's anything wrong with that from a development perspective.
Yeah, it was interesting. The guy, my assistant head coach, Josh, was joking, like, the one thing we didn't expect was kind of a short counterpuncher, which is kind of what the guy was. So, but the nice thing about Lorenzo is with all those amateur, that amateur background, I mean, at this point, there's no style that he hasn't seen. That's one of the things that amateur boxing does for you. So, it's, if you have enough rounds and you have enough time and you can make adjustments, he'll figure out whoever's in there. You know what I mean? It's just a matter of kind of getting a read on the guy. But he was awkward. He had some awkward moves, and but I thought it was great. I was super happy with the way everything went.
Well, in kind of speaking of early knockouts and stuff like that, it seems to me, Lorenzo, like your style is a little bit more geared toward Molly. You mentioned the next fight probably being the last 4-rounder, which in some ways, and you have to go more rounds, that sucks, but in some ways that's better, because it seems like you're a little bit more like you make adjustments, and it not that you start slow per se, but you're just more of a tactical fighter.
In the amateurs, I trained a lot for the third round to be your strongest round, because that's what the judges have fresh in their mind when the fight's over. I think that is going to carry over into my pro career. Kind of always had kind of natural stamina for the most part. Not don't get overexerted in the ring too much. I'm relaxed, so I think that could be definitely beneficial going into later rounds for sure. Yeah,
I actually preferred longer fights. You said it sucks, but it actually, I mean, if you're conditioned the right way, 4 rounds feels really short. I'm sure you felt like it kind of just went by in a blink. That's how I used to feel. And once you get up to like 6, 8 rounds, 10, it gives you more time to work. It's really hard, which again, I think is a testament to him that he was able to make some adjustments as we went. We were, trying to do that. But, that's a tough thing to do in 4 rounds. It's almost more like I kind of liken it to just a sprint. It's like amateur boxing people talk about making adjustments in amateur boxing. It's almost impossible. It goes by so fast. So I think once he gets past this 4-round, we're going to do another 4-rounder just to kind of, again, I just want to make sure that rust is kind of off for good, and then we'll go up to 6. And with the conditioning and stuff being what it is, he works hard on that. I think he'll like it a lot better, just more time to work. This guy, I don't know if you could see it on the video, but by the 3rd round, I mean, Lorenzo was starting to really break him down. His eye was swelling shut, and he was getting beat up pretty bad. So, it's great to have that kind of one punch knockout power. Those are the highlight reel things. Like on the card last night, that knockout, who was it? Callum Smith? Was that who it was? I mean, that was brutal.
That was rough.
And that'll be on every highlight reel for the rest of the year. But the fact is that doesn't happen very often. I mean, it really doesn't. The most of those kind of knockouts, you see the end result, which is a knockout. What you don't see are the 7 rounds before that, where the guy just kind of broke this guy down until he could get him out of there. So, Lorenzo was starting to really break that guy down. I think with more rounds, that kind of thing is going to keep happening. And like I said, your pro debut, the first couple fights, whatever, 1st round knockout, great. It's a confidence booster. It's fun, especially if you're in front of a hometown crowd. But as far as development, it just doesn't do you much good.
Well, last question before I get out of here. I don't remember, at least I don't think I've gone except for one time to your gym when you were having like an active training session. And I don't remember if you were playing music. I think you were. But I was going to ask if you listen to music while training, like what are you listening to? What is it you're putting on?
What do I put on?
Either one of you.
Or what would he prefer?
Yeah, either
So
one.
it might be two different things. If you come in, he'll tell you it's going to be Lady Gaga, probably a lot of that, some Madonna. It's a lot of 80s music. And they kind of joke about it. That's just what plays in here all the time. You love that now, though, right? Don't lie. You love Lady Gaga. Yeah. Even where were we? Oh, we were in a taxi cab in driving to the fight in Mexico. And this guy, the taxi driver who didn't speak much English, but he was playing something from the 80s. And Lorenzo was like, oh, this sounds like the gym, music. So that's what's going on most of the time in here. And they pretend sometimes like they don't like it, but they do.
Well, at least it's upbeat, it can get them moving a little bit.
Yeah.
Lorenzo, what would you prefer though? Like, what would you generally listen to while training if you could choose?
I listen to everything. I do listen to a lot of 80s music and stuff too on my own, but yeah, I don't necessarily have a specific go-to. I was actually even thinking about that, and as far as like walkout songs too, I always blank whenever they ask me.
Yeah, we have a good Latin playlist too that's really fun, and that kind of music's fun too. It's really upbeat, and so we play that kind of stuff too in here every now and then. But yeah, I love pop music, and it's my gym, so that's what we listen to.
You better be careful because you find something, because then they're gonna pick something for you, and Molly's gonna pick like Bad Romance or something like that.
I've tried to get him to use that song before, and he won't do it. So we're working on it. We'll see. At some point in his career, that's going to happen.
But you know what? That could actually be a pretty good tactic, because that could like throw the opponent off, like they're waiting for something hardcore to slam in, and it's da da da, and I don't know. That might kind of unsettle them a little bit.
It could. I was at a pro fight one time, and this guy came out to I don't remember what song, but it was a Backstreet Boys song, and it was hilarious. Like, I mean, you could tell he loved that song. Like that was his pump up song, and he was a tough dude, but yeah, it was kind of funny. So I think sometimes the music choice for your walkout can be kind of funny. I noticed Anthony Joshua last night, we were commenting, didn't he use that training montage song from Rocky? It was hilarious. It's like the worst, cheesiest 80s song, but it was kind of awesome, so I think you can kind of have fun with it.
Yeah. It was definitely, I think for somebody, it was like, I'm 38, and that's like the perfect age to remember that. So I heard it, but also I heard it and I was like, but Apollo Creed in that movie. Oh no.
Yeah, I know. I recognized the song right away. And then I was watching the fight with some people, and one of them was younger, and she was like, what? I'm like, yeah, it's because you're not old enough to remember the song, but
just let us have our embarrassment.
Yeah,
right. It's exactly. Okay. Don't worry about it.
Yep.
Well, hey, I want to thank both of you for spending a little bit of time answering some questions and letting us get to know you a little bit. I really do appreciate it.
Thanks. Well, it's our pleasure. We hope to see you soon at some fights. Hopefully 2022 we'll be back in the same room.
Yeah, and Lorenzo, congratulations on your win. I hope you plow forward, man.
Thanks, Patrick.
All right. Thanks again, both of you. And if you wouldn't mind, if you're on social media, everybody listening in or watching in, for instance, you can go to on Facebook, McConnell's Boxing Academy. There's a page there. They provide a lot of updates about things going on in the gym, and I think a couple things outside of the gym of the feline variety, for instance, and some musical things, as you've said. But that's a good place to catch up. And in the meanwhile, if you would subscribe on both YouTube and all of the regular podcast places, and Knuckles and Gloves Boxing Radio, I would appreciate it. And thanks again, you two.
Thanks so much.